Well, I wanted a more relaxed video, and this isn't exactly what I had in mind. But, nevertheless, Lizzo.
Sheesh.
For the two people that haven't heard yet, we aren't allowed to like Lizzo anymore. This month, 3 former backup dancers filed a lawsuit against Lizzo, her production company, and Shirlene Quigley, her dance captain, citing instances of sexual, religious, and racial harassment, and weight shaming amidst a few other things. And the internet lost its mind. Everyone was quick to make their feelings known about Lizzo's alleged conduct that very much flew in the face of the body-positive, female-empowering image that the artist has attempted to cultivate with so many of her songs and videos. The weight-shaming allegation in particular really seemed to catch on, as it combined 2 massive things that are guaranteed to put a fire underneath Twitter: hypocrisy and an excuse to make fat jokes. But the backlash against Lizzo is something so intense, I've never seen anything that I could compare it to. But from a certain perspective, I can understand why it's pissed so many people off. Hypocrisy is something that's generally so universal to understand. Someone says something, but does something else. And Lizzo's uniqueness and main selling point has been her inclusiveness and positivity that she's generated within her music. I mean, I put 2 of her music videos on the best list for 2022. Now, does that mean I'm going to retroactively go and remove them and replace them with different videos I think better deserve the spot? Well, no. And the reason why is what we're looking at today. This notion of when it's appropriate to separate the art from the artist. This is a topic that's been broached by many well-learned and intellectual people, all much more qualified to talk about it than myself. It's by no means a simple concept, and the depth to it is just staggering. It's a dilemma that's definitely more prevalent now, post-Me Too. How does anyone reconcile the joy and emotion stirred by a great piece of art with the moral implications that the art was created by someone that you don't want to be tied to? And that's all ignoring the financial aspect of this. Most art nowadays is a commodity. By consuming the art, you're supporting the artist, be it financially or otherwise. When is it morally justifiable to buy songs or watch music videos written and produced by certain undesirable artists? The discussion is not made easier by the fact that the argument of separating the art from the artist is only ever brought up as a defense or a justification for something. It's used to argue in defense of an artist or their actions, saying that despite their presence, the art is still good. You don't see people arguing that videos like Blinding Lights or Blank Space are better if you ignore the artist's presence entirely. There's no discussion of separating the art from the artist when discussing universally beloved songs, but honestly, maybe there should be. If anything, just to dispel the idea that it's only a discussion used to validate problematic individuals. So as you can see, this is a tremendously huge topic that has no chance of being covered in a 20-minute video on YouTube. So I'm just going to offer some ideas that helped me come to terms with the fact that liking Lizzo's past music videos don't make me a terrible person. This discussion of separating art from artist is a very broad one because there's so many different types of art and artists you can apply it to. For this video, I'll be sticking with how it applies to music videos and, to a lesser extent, the music featured in those videos. Which brings us to our first major hurdle. Is the music video even art? Most people agree that music videos are an advertising tool to sell the song, which is the art itself. And it's not easy to disprove this notion. In its simplest form, a music video is a concert that anyone can attend, and concerts create a direct connection between audience and artist, rather than audience and art. But maybe that's where the distinction lies. A music video is the connection of the audience and the art. That's why we can have snow globe videos that may not feature the artist at all, or narrative videos that don't even center around the artist. When you go to a concert, you're there to see the artist perform their songs. When you go to a music video, you're there to see the song be remade into a new form. Okay, so let's go along with the idea that music videos are art. Great. But how do we actually go about prying the artist and their own drama from the art that usually has nothing to do with it? I went about it by looking into a brief history of what the role the artist plays in literature analysis up until now. One of the arguments you can take to justify ignoring the artist mirrors the view of new critics at the beginning of the 20th century. This perspective suggests that certain art must stand on its own. The way to determine how great art is to evaluate how well the artist managed to eradicate all traces of themselves from it. Now, this can't really be applied to music videos, as the artist almost always has their face plastered all over the video. This way of thinking was being applied to poetry at the time, but there are still some concepts and ideas that can be reappropriated here. You could evaluate and justify your appreciation for your music video as a standalone piece of media, completely separate from the singer who sings the song, and almost from the song itself. You treat the artist's appearance in the video as a stock stand-in, or as a caricature of their pop image. In doing this, it's irrelevant what the artist may have done, unless the art is specifically about the artist's actions, in which case it's bad art anyway. It's a very scientific approach to understanding art, calculated and measurable, so it may not be particularly popular. Another option is the postmodern perspective. Looking at the art through a postmodern lens means operating under the pretense that the author is dead. This idea suggests that the artist's intent and interpretation of the art is meaningless, as the art is being reinvented every time someone new consumes it. It doesn't matter what Miley Cyrus thinks about Party in the USA now, or when she made it. All that matters is what the audience hears in it now. This suggests music videos as an art form have no stable or definitive measure or interpretation. There's no way to clearly label them, as each interpretation should be wholly unique and personalized. I actually like this idea a lot. Similar to how the New Critics interpreted it, it dismisses the influence of any problematic artists, but provides the caveat that the audience plays a pivotal role in the art's value. It also speaks to a bit of a unique power dynamic between the artist and the audience. If the audience uses the artist in their interpretation of the art, the audience is sacrificing an amount of interpretive power to the artist. You're giving up part of your ability to interpret art because you're acknowledging there is a correct way to do so. For example, when you listen to the song Pompeii, and it sounds like a song about the anxiety someone might feel while in a relationship that's nearing its end, but then in an interview with Bastille singer Dan Smith, he talks about how he wrote the song as an imaginary conversation between corpses at the end of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The postmodern perspective suggests that entertaining his notion of the song is surrendering some amount of power to him. It also offers this idea that the new connections that develop well after the art has already been made are just as valid because the art is continually being reinvented every time a new audience consumes it. Whether those connections, positive or negative, were intended is irrelevant. After all, the artist is dead. Then we come to the new historicists, the argument that all works of art were embedded in the time and place that they were created in. So to thoroughly understand them, you need to understand the context of their creation. Basically suggesting that it's essential to understand the where, how, and when just as much as the why. The argument says that if you were to dismiss the context of the art, it's to dismiss any potential connection the art has with its context. So therefore, when a new context is discovered, the connections between that context and the art must be considered. So, seemingly, new historicists would argue that recognizing the potential irony in Lizzo's older music videos, given the allegations today, is essential to understanding the art. All the rumors are true, yeah. But obviously we don't have all the time in the world to consider the context of every song or video we listen to. So, when is it acceptable to decide not to engage with an artist's art? And is it ever acceptable to ignore certain aspects of the artist's work? Well, we could argue that engaging critically with a work of art is completely different from endorsing the morality of the artist. I make a top 10 list of the worst music videos of any given year, not because I want to endorse what makes them terrible, but because I think it's important to recognize what doesn't work, and what isn't a virtue in the medium. This is honestly my relationship with Drake and his music. His attitude and his demeanor are just so frustrating to me in every video he's in, but to appear on the worst list, he or the people behind him would have to actually be putting a lot of thought and consideration into the video. And there is. I'm not sitting there bored. It does elicit an emotional response, but it's one of frustration and anger. To enjoy songs like Gold Digger and Stronger from Kanye West isn't the same as endorsing him or any of his views. And I think that's a fair comment. It's a desperate argument to claim someone is anti-Semitic just because they think Heartless sounds cool. Alternatively, we could argue that some artists don't deserve the attention, and the critics have the right to curate their choices. It's for this reason you won't see any politically charged music videos or outright degenerates appear on my list of worst music videos. I mean, why would I want to provide another platform for this artist over everyone else who would be much more worthy of your attention and my time? But approaching that topic, the question that should be asked of you when you do like the work of a controversial artist is this art asking me to be complicit for what the artist has done? Is this art asking me just to give them a pass? When I watch and enjoy the music video for Am I Ready? Am I being complicit with what Lizzo was being accused of? I'd argue no. This new context doesn't tarnish what I already enjoyed about the music video, and while it's now in the back of my mind, I don't feel a particular kinship or solidarity with Lizzo as an artist, in the same way I didn't when I first saw it. But if you want to see an example of art specifically asking you to be complicit, look at Freaky Friday. This is another song and video I had a hard time reconciling because DJ Mustard's beat is very good, and if this video was done about anybody else, the attention to detail and uniqueness would have been so endearing. But it's not. It's about Chris Brown, a very common go-to when thinking about problematic musicians, that if you admit you like any of his songs, you'll get some weird looks at the dinner table. The song specifically references Chris Brown's controversial past, and completely glosses over it for the sake of celebrating what it would like to swap bodies with Chris Brown.
Down the street and ain't nobody know my name. Whoa. Ain't no paparazzi flashing pictures, this is great. Whoa. Ain't nobody judging cause I'm black or my controversial past. I'ma go and see a movie and relax.
So, I'd argue music videos that are explicitly asking for complicity, like this, are head and shoulders above the unrelated work of a controversial artist like Lizzo or Kanye. Alright, so that's a lot to think about. We've covered 3 different perspectives that you could adopt in understanding the contribution of an artist to their art. We've also looked at the moral aspects of appreciating and supporting an artist's work. But these are all very lofty ambitions for those overthinkers that want to truly evaluate art. What about everyone else? What about those people that just like a music video because of its pretty colours, or a song just because it sounds nice? I think the appropriate response is to consider a variety of these perspectives and let them influence your decision. At the end of the day, Lizzo fans who idolize Lizzo herself because they saw things in her rather than seeing things in her art are just going to be devastated. One of the hardest things to come to terms with in the way parasocial relationships are evolving online is that the artist is not you. Nobody else is you. You may see similarities or aspire to change to be more like the artist, but they aren't you, and you won't become them, no matter how much you do or don't want to. Actually, while I'm on that topic, let's talk about Doja Cat for a second.
Talk your shit about me, I can easily disprove it. It's stupid, you follow me, but you don't really care about the music.
Here we have another artist who looked like she was aimed to be put into that category of artists that you're not allowed to like. Recently, she lost 250,000 followers on Instagram because of an online spat she had where she took aim at fans for using the term kitten to identify themselves as her fans. To an extent, I can see where she's coming from. The idolization of musicians to the point where they get treated as deities, it's a fungus that grows in the hotbed of rot and filth that Twitter is. And I'm all for its removal, but I think she might have been a little heavy-handed. Recently, I considered her song Say So for my list of the best music videos of 2020. When I first saw it, I thought it was pretty great, but digging into it a little bit deeper revealed an uglier discourse surrounding it, which actually dips a lot into what we've talked about so far. The song itself is one you're not allowed to like because of the involvement of its producer. A lot of music critics noted that the commercial success of Say So could be considered as a comeback of sorts for Dr. Luke. Quick history lesson. Dr. Luke is at the center of the Kesha lawsuits of 2014, where she filed a civil suit against the producer for sex-based hate crimes, employment discrimination, and inflicting emotional distress. She alleged that Dr. Luke physically, emotionally, verbally, and sexually abused her since the beginning of their professional relationship, and that he drugged and raped her on 2 occasions. As of June this year, Kesha and Dr. Luke released a joint statement that they had officially reached a settlement, where she just wants to move on with her life, and he continues to deny her original claims. Now, coming back to the topic at hand, it would seem the success of Say So might be an indication of the very quick rehabilitation of Dr. Luke's career in an industry that was actually really slow to react to the initial allegations. So, the idea becomes this. If you like Say So, are you, as a listener and paying customer, contributing to putting Dr. Luke back in a position of power after he was alleged to do all these things? If you buy the song or watch the video, a portion of that revenue is going directly to him. So maybe it's morally wrong to give his work any support. But then how is that fair on everyone else? How is it fair that the work of Doja Cat and Hannah Lux Davis, not to mention the entirety of the crew and cast who worked to bring this video to life, all of that work gets completely dismissed and ignored because of the producer of the song? Well, unfortunately, that question probably won't get the consideration it deserves, because that brings us to the other reason that you're not allowed to like Say So anymore. Doja Cat doesn't. One of the other things that Doja Cat did to slap down any potential fan of her work was claim that her albums Hot Pink and Planet Her were simply cash grabs that people fell for. So, not only is this a song that's produced by Dr. Luke, even Doja Cat is telling you it's a deliberate con and you're all being fooled. But that being said, her vaguely bashing her fans for liking those albums is a bold move with extremely unclear intent. This doesn't come across as Doja offering support to those who don't want to give Dr. Luke any more money. It reminds me more of when Halsey was getting annoyed that she was being considered a pop artist and not alternative. It seems like the wild thrashing of an artist who doesn't like the position they've found themselves in. Particularly even the fact that there's no way to outright sever the emotional connection to art that you like. That's what this whole video is about. If you liked Say So, you can't just stop liking it and then never have liked it because Doja Cat this year told you it's not her real music. Those emotional connections that you made with the art are real and they're personal to you. And that's why I think shaping your opinion from a variety of perspectives is so important. New historicists would argue that the song is problematic because it's supporting 2 different toxic players in the industry. But the new critics at the beginning of the 20th century would suggest that you focus on the space around the artist and ignore the context of the song's development. Focus on the work being put in by Hannah Lux Davis, the cast of dancers and performers, the crew who assembled the video to begin with. The postmodern perspective would suggest that Doja's interpretation of the song means nothing. Pay it no mind. The response it gets from you is what matters. And the video isn't asking you to be complicit in Dr. Luke's actions. You could make it a very real argument that the music video has nothing to do with him. And I'd argue that letting him taint your view of the music video is unfair on the real artist here, Hannah Lux Davis. But now, at least you can see why, given all of this context, I couldn't fit it in as an entry on the best list. It would have taken me too long just to explain all of this, let alone actually tell you what I like about it. Alright, look. A lot of the questions here today don't have any clean-cut, easy answers, because, as I said, this topic is really complicated and wide-reaching. A person's interpretation and emotional response to art isn't a rational decision, it's a feeling. And there's no correct way to feel. And you can't just unfeel what you felt. As a critic, there's no way for me to instruct you about how to approach art and what you're allowed to love and hate and how to express that. But what I can do is I can offer a new perspective to consider. And in Lizzo's case, I mean, you've got a lot of options. You can be postmodern and claim her art for yourself, personally recreating it every time you consume it. You can use it as an opportunity to ask yourself if loving her art makes you complicit in her allegations. Or you could accept that the artist just isn't perfect, but still grow to appreciate what they've done for you regardless. And if all else fails, you can always just fall back on old reliable. I think Marge said it best. Why do you like this artist's work?
I just think they're neat.